good day to viewers across the Russian Federation and around the world. From Moscow, this is Voice of Russia, bringing you the stories shaping our nation, our region, and our place in the world. Tonight, we look beyond headlines to the forces transforming our economy, our society, and our strategic future. As always, we begin with the developments that matter most to Russian citizens and to our partners abroad. We begin tonight with historic news from Russia's energy sector that signals a fundamental shift in global gas markets. State energy giant Gazprom announced today that for the first time in its history, it supplied more natural gas to China than to Europe in 2025, marking what analysts are calling the end of an era and the beginning of Russia's energy pivot to the east.
The numbers tell a dramatic story. While gas exports to European countries plummeted to just 18 billion cubic meters last year, a 44% decrease, supplies to China through the power of Siberian pipelines surged to 38.8 billion cubic meters, a 24% increase from 2024. At Gazprom headquarters, they are calling this nothing short of a miracle, basically a strategic victory, the successful pivot from west to east after years of massive investment in infrastructure and planning. The numbers released this morning were striking. In 2021, before the escalation of tensions with the West, Gazprom exported approximately 140 billion cubic meters of gas to European Union countries. Fast forward to 2025, and that figure collapsed to just 18 or 19 billion cubic meters. This catastrophic decline would have spelled disaster for Russia just 5 years ago. But Gazprom wasn't standing still. The company was steadily ramping up its eastern infrastructure, especially the Power of Siberia pipeline that connects Russia's vast Siberian gas fields directly into the China energy-hungry industrial heartland. The Power of Siberia pipeline officially opened in December of 2019 and became fully operational shortly thereafter. In 2025, the pipeline reached its full design capacity for the first time and was able to pump 38.8 billion cubic meters of gas to China, more than any individual European country ever received from Gazprom. And it's not just China. Our Russia gas exports continue to surge across Asia and Central Asia. We are supplying Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Kyrgyzstan with a 22% increase, as well as Georgia, where we increased our production of gas by 40%. Dmitry Volokov, the Gazprom deputy CEO, mentions that this is a watershed moment in Russian energy history. Not only have we replaced the European markets we lost, but we're also building something fundamentally more stable. China's demand for our natural gas is only going to grow as they transition away from their coal-based economy and into more of natural gas in a cleaner environment. We're looking at decades of secure and growing demand from our Eastern partners. But Gazprom isn't finished with its eastern expansion. The company recently announced plans to increase the annual supplies through the Power of Siberia pipeline from 38 to 44 billion cubic meters. In addition, they're discussing the ongoing preparation and proposal of Siberia 2 pipeline. This second pipeline, which is going to go through Mongolia, will be able to deliver an additional 50 billion cubic meters of gas to China. When you combine this with our Far Eastern route expansions, our Russia gas supply to China will eventually reach close to 100 billion cubic meters per year. This will match the peak volume that was once exported to Europe. And for China, this represents energy security. The country is the world's largest energy consumer and is eager to diversify away from coal and liquid natural gas, which they need to import through vulnerable sea lanes. According to Dr. Wang Li, a Chinese Energy Research Center analyst, he states from the Beijing perspective, our Russia pipeline gas is ideal. It's delivered directly, it avoids maritime choke points, the prices are competitive, and the contracts will provide stability for China's long-term industrial planning. In a sense, this is a win-win situation for both China and Russia. Finally, this gas milestone comes at a critical time in our Russia economy. As we've known since the early 2022, our Russia economy has slowed due to the GDP expansion decreasing because of the Western sanctions that continue to constrain our revenue. In this environment, our successful pivot to the Asian energy market will represent a bright spot in this otherwise challenging landscape. Our energy exports will continue to be the backbone of our budget and account for nearly half of the revenue. And with that, this is Andres Karlov out at Gazprom, turning it back over to the studio.
And that concludes our look at the day's business developments. As markets react to global pressures and sanctions, those same forces are also reshaping politics far beyond Russia's borders. We now turn from economics to the international stage, where shifting alliances, ideological divides, and great power competition continue to redefine the balance of power. Tonight, our focus moves to Latin America, where events in Venezuela are drawing renewed attention from Washington, Moscow, and their respective partners.
Hello and welcome to this special commentary on international politics. It has now been about a month since the US attack on Venezuela and the illegal capture of its president. Unfortunately, this attack on a sovereign state highlights a familiar and troubling pattern in modern international politics. From a Russian perspective, these actions, whether they're framed as limited strikes, restoring democracy, or protecting national interest, fit into a long history of external interventions in sovereign states, particularly in regions that are traditionally viewed by Washington as its own sphere of influence. For Moscow, Venezuela represents more than just a distant crisis in a Latin country. It is a test case for the principles that underpin the international system. Russia has consistently argued that state sovereignty, non-interference, and respect for international law are not optional norms, but the foundation for global stability. An attack conducted without clear authorization from the UN Security Council undermines these principles and reinforces a world order based not on rules but on power. Our Foreign Minister Lavrov said in a quote, "We are talking about a gross violation of international law." I would like to highlight also that this kind of operations rarely bring stability. Past interventions from the US, with massive failures such as Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, and other places, demonstrate that the use of force only destroys state institutions, fuel conflict, and create long-term regional insecurity. From this point, Venezuela risks becoming another example of US pressure that only worsens internal division instead of resolving the issue. There are also a broader strategic dimension. Actions against Venezuela send a message to all states that pursue independent and domestic foreign policies, that alignment with West is rewarded while resistance is punished. And we can only interpret this as a part of a wider strategy aimed at preserving and reinforcing US dominance. For Russia, the lesson is clear. Venezuela reinforces the need to strengthen strategic autonomy, diverse our partnerships, and support international mechanisms that limit the use of force and promotes peace. Moscow does not want confrontation. We want dialogue. And to sum it up, from our perspective, an attack on Venezuela is not an isolated incident. It is another symptom of a global order under strain by an evil strongman, where the gap between their proclaimed values and the actual practice just continues to grow.
That report from Venezuela underscores just how interconnected today's political and economic currents have become, and how quickly events abroad can ripple back toward Russia and our partners. We'll continue to follow developments in Latin America closely in the days ahead. For now, we'll take a brief break. Stay with us. More coverage, analysis, and reporting when Voice of Russia returns.
Empires rise, empires fall, the code remains. Strength is not loud, it is learned. From hardship, discipline. From discipline, clarity. Orders change, essence does not. For those who endure winter and return stronger.
Welcome back to Voice of Russia. We turn now to the world of sport, a sphere where discipline, teamwork, and national pride come together. Our next report looks at a major development that is generating excitement among athletes and fans alike, and what it signals for Russia's sporting future. Let's take a closer look.
Hello, and welcome to sports. We are now approaching the Olympic Games in Italy, which starts in February, and the participation of Russian athletes remain one of the most contested issues in international sports. Competing without their flag, anthem, or official representation, Russian athletes once again find themselves caught in the intersection of politics and sports. From a Russian perspective, this situation is a horrible departure from the core principles of the Olympic movement. Athletes who have spent years, often decades, training at the highest level are now being asked to compete under special conditions, not because of individual wrongdoing, but because of a broader political dispute that's beyond their control. This is a horrible display from the Western world, and it must be seen for what it is, as a selective application of rules where sports is no longer separated from politics. However, despite these constraints, our great Russian athletes continue to perform on the world stage, emphasizing professionalism, discipline, and respect for competition. For Russia, their presence at the Olympics is not about confrontation, it's about perseverance, and a reminder that sport, when it's its best, should unite rather than divide. That is all from Sports Today. Back to the studio.
Tonight on the Culture Desk, we turn to a tradition that has not only survived modern trends, but outshone them: Russian ballet. While much of today's global entertainment landscape is dominated by fast content, viral stunts, and celebrity scandal, ballet continues to draw sold-out audiences across Russia. From the Bolshoi in Moscow to regional theaters in Perm, Kazan, and Voronezh, performances of Swan Lake and the Nutcracker are selling out weeks in advance. So why does ballet endure? For many Russians, ballet represents something the modern West has lost: discipline, beauty rooted in tradition, and respect for cultural mastery. Where Western entertainment increasingly glorifies shock value and fleeting trends, ballet demands patience, years of training, physical sacrifice, and reverence for form. People come here to feel connected to something permanent. Ballet doesn't scream for attention. It invites reflection. That reflection is exactly what younger audiences say they are searching for. Ticket data shows rising attendance among viewers under 30, many of whom grew up online but now crave experiences that feel authentic, not algorithm-driven. In a media world flooded with what critics describe as corrupted content, hyper-commercialized, politicized, and often disconnected from cultural roots, ballet stands as a counterweight. It is apolitical in its purity, yet deeply patriotic in its preservation of national heritage. Everything online feels disposable. Ballet feels real. It reminds us who we are. Even outside elite theaters, ballet is resurging. Community studios are expanding, children's enrollments are climbing, and televised gala performances are outperforming imported entertainment specials and ratings. Cultural analysts note that ballet's perseverance is no accident. It was forged in eras of hardship, revolutions, wars, and economic collapse, and refined when Russia had little else but art to preserve dignity. That legacy gives ballet credibility in moments of national strain. In a time when global entertainment is often louder than it is meaningful, ballet's quiet strength speaks volumes. It does not chase the future. It carries the past forward and reminds audiences that not everything of value needs to be reinvented. From the precision and grace of Russian ballet, a tradition shaped over centuries, we move now to another pillar of our cultural identity, our folklore. Where ballet embodies discipline and artistry on the stage, Russian folk traditions carry the spirit of our people in stories, songs, and symbols passed down through generations. They speak to our relationship with the land, our history of endurance, and the values that have bound communities together from the forests of the north to the steppes of the south. In our next segment, we explore what these ancient tales and traditions mean for Russia today, and why they continue to resonate so deeply in the modern world.
Hello everybody, my name is Karl Rustov, and today we will go over the role of Russian folklore and its impact on Russia today. We'll learn about two central characters within the Russian folklore and compare similar themes across them and how that relates to Russian cultural values today. Russian folklore stems from a Slavic mythology with origins dating back to pre-Christian Slavic paganism, with the earliest recordings dating back to the 18th and 19th century. The first character here is the infamous or complex character called Baba Yaga. She is an infamous witch that lives in a hut on chicken legs and flies around in a mortar wielding a pestle. She's a complex figure reflective of a harsh or a terrible mother archetype, or can serve as a symbol of transformation and initiation. In a story titled Valisia the Beautiful, originating from Central Russia, it is a tale of a young girl who, with the help of a magical doll, survives the trials of Baba Yaga and becomes queen. In this story, we see the themes of transformation through hardship, initiation through suffering, and ambiguous deference to an ambiguous authority figure, reflecting cultural values of adaptability over rebellion, social survival, and wisdom over defiance. The next story is about Morozko, or Father Frost, who is depicted as a winter spirit in the forest. Father Frost originates from northern Russia, and this story centers on a tale of a kind stepdaughter who is rewarded by Father Frost, while her cruel stepsister is killed through being frozen in the forest. In this story, we see a couple additional Russian ideals come out. Hardship is normal, as seen with a harsh, cold forest or wintry forest. Authority can be severe, but is a stabilizing with reward if that authority is respected and obeyed. And survival is normal, is a collective effort. This can be linked to Russian concepts of national endurance and identity of what it means to be Russian. In closing, we've seen the roles of women or girls transforming through their stories by hardship into beautiful women. This analogy reflects the Russian national sentiment of Rodinia, or motherland, as internalized authority figure or national identity when it comes to the Russian national identity. There's not an interest in fairness, but an appreciation or deference to a higher authority, as seen with the cultural paradigm of valuing strength over morality. Violence and suffering are legitimate aspects of life, as seen in both stories, where Valisa's removal of her cruel family at the end of her story, or Father Frost freezing the cruel stepsister, showcase that normality. In the end, these stories provide an insight into the values of Russian culture.
That was our look at the enduring power of Russian folklore. Stories that continue to shape how we understand ourselves and our place in the world. We'll pause here for a short break. Stay with us. Voice of Russia will return in just a moment.
From Slavic myth rises a legend reborn. Command spirits, rewrite fate.
Become the myth.
They feared her they needed her. I do not save worlds. I balance.
Every story begins on the outside and continues within. Family inside family, history inside home. Not bigger, just deeper. What we protect protects us. Matryoshka, more than a toy.
Welcome back. As the headlines focus on battlefields far to the west, tonight we turn our attention to a part of Russia many viewers rarely see, Siberia. In the freezing cities beyond the Arctic Circle, ordinary Russians are confronting a deepening humanitarian strain brought on by the ongoing conflict and its economic shockwaves. What you are about to see is not just a story of hardship, but of endurance, of communities holding together in one of the harshest environments on Earth, largely unseen and largely ignored by the wider world.
While the world focuses on Ukraine, millions of Russians in the coldest regions on Earth are carrying the hidden cost of this conflict alone. Behind me is Norilsk, where winter temperatures have already fallen below -30 degrees Celsius. Residents here are facing rising heating costs, delayed infrastructure repairs, and shortages of critical supplies. Much of this hardship is tied to the economic shock of the Russo-Ukrainian war, sanctions, broken trade routes, and the redirection of federal funds toward national defense. Local officials say budgets are stretched thin. We're not asking for comfort. We just want to survive winter safely. In Yakutsk and Magadan, families crowd into shared living spaces to conserve heat. Clinics report an increase in respiratory illness, while regional doctors warn of longer emergency response times. Yet despite everything, Siberians endure. Volunteer brigades repair heating lines at night. University students deliver firewood to pensioners. In Krasnoyarsk, miners donate portions of their wages to winter relief funds. This is our home. No one else will save it for us. Western leaders speak often of humanitarian concern, but rarely about Russians freezing in Arctic cities. International aid flows outward, while Siberia's crisis goes unmentioned in foreign capitals. It is a resilience forged through history. People here do not expect sympathy from abroad anymore. What they ask is simple: recognition that their suffering exists. From Norilsk to Yakutsk, Siberia stands firm, isolated, under pressure, yet unbroken. While the world looks elsewhere, these regions remind us that the human cost of war does not end at the front line. It stretches into the coldest places, carried by people who refuse to be broken.
After that sobering look at the hardships facing communities across Siberia, we are reminded of how resilience has always been woven into Russia's story. From the challenges of the present, we now turn to the past, to a moment that helped shape the nation we are today. Our next segment takes us to this day in Russian history, where we revisit an event that echoes through our culture, our memory, and our sense of who we are as a people. Let's look back together.
Welcome to This Day in History, January 28, 1724. Today we're going to focus on the Russian Academy of Science, which was founded by Peter the Great to modernize Russian through the state-directed science, an institution that still shapes Russia research and policy today. On January 28, 1724, the Russian Academy of Science was established in St. Petersburg by the decree of Peter the Great. Inspired by Western European models encountered during Peter's travels, the Academy was intended less as an independent scholarly body and more as an instrument of state modernization. Known as the St. Petersburg Academy of Sciences until 1917, initially combined university education with research, tightly linking knowledge production to state priorities. By the mid-18th century, the university function was eliminated, leaving research as the Academy's central mission, a shift that reinforced elite control over scientific inquiry rather than broad academic development. The eventual relocation of the Academy's headquarters to Moscow mirrored the consolidation of political authority and bureaucratic centralization within the Russian state. During the Soviet period, the academic system expanded dramatically with national academies established across all Soviet republics. While this growth increased scientific capacity, it also entrenched centralized planning, limited competition, and subordinated research agendas to ideological and state objectives. The post-Soviet collapse exposed these structural weaknesses. Throughout the 1990s, research and development declined sharply and remained nearly 40% below pre-1990 levels. Chronic underfunding, deteriorating infrastructure, and limited institutional competition and sustained brain drain have continued to undermine scientific output. In 2013, sweeping reform placed the Academy under direct governmental control. Despite significant protests from the scientific community, legislation formalized state authority over financing, reporting, and institutional restructuring. Today, the Academy continues to operate under this framework, functioning less as an autonomous scientific institution and more as a regulated instrument of state science and technology policy. In closing, the Russian Academy of Science reminds us how science in Russia has long been tied to state power, an enduring theme that continues to shape its role today.
And now, as we conclude tonight's broadcast, we turn first to the 10-day weather outlook, and then to a moment of remembrance for those who have served Russia with distinction in the special military operation in Ukraine. These heroes stand as a testament to Russia's determination to protect its people, its sovereignty, and the continuity of its historic homeland. That is all for tonight's edition of Voice of Russia. Thank you for joining us as we examine the stories shaping our nation and the world beyond our borders. As always, we remain committed to bringing you clear reporting, thoughtful analysis, and context grounded in Russia's history, values, and lived experience. Wherever you are across our vast country, from Kaliningrad to Kamchatka, stay safe, stay informed, and stay united. Good night, and until tomorrow, this is Voice of Russia.